The year was 2347, and the planet called New Busan was the pride of human expansion. It sat at the edge of known space, far from Earth, but full of life and hope. Green fields stretched across its surface. Rivers flowed clean and clear, and in every city and every town, the sound of children laughing filled the air. 80,000 humans called this world home. 12,000 of them were children. Dr. Yoon Hana stood at the window of her small home, watching her daughter play in the garden below. Kim Sua was 9 years old, with bright eyes and a smile that could warm the coldest room. She was chasing butterflies, the native kind with wings like blue glass, and her laughter rose up to where her mother stood. Hannah smiled. This was why they had come so far from Earth. For moments like this, for a future where children could grow up under alien skies and still know peace. She did not know that peace would end today. The Starlight Academy was the finest school on New Busan. Children from all across the colony attended classes there, learning about science, art, history, and the vast galaxy that surrounded them. That afternoon, 347 children were inside its walls when the sky turned dark. The Veldra ships came without warning. They were large and gray, shaped like floating stones, and they descended from the clouds like a nightmare made real. No one had seen them enter the system. No one had detected their approach. They simply appeared as if the universe itself had betrayed humanity. Captain Li Wu-jin was the first officer to respond. He was young, only 28 years old, but he had sharp instincts and a mind built for crisis. When his console lit up with emergency signals, he did not hesitate. He ran to the command center and began issuing orders, but it was already too late. The Veldra moved fast. Their soldiers, tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, poured out of landing craft and surrounded the school. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They simply began taking children. Parents screamed. Teachers tried to fight back. Local security forces fired their weapons, but Veldra armor absorbed the shots like water-absorbing stones. Within 20 minutes, the school was empty. 347 children. Gone. Dr. Yoon Hana arrived at the scene just as the last Veldra's ship lifted into the sky. She had run the entire way from her home, her lungs burning, her heart pounding. She pushed through the crowd of crying parents and stared up at the gray ships. As they rose higher and higher, Su-Ah was on one of those ships. Her daughter, her only child, Hannah, fell to her knees. The world around her became silent. She could see mouths moving, people shouting, but she heard nothing. There was only the image of those ships disappearing into the clouds, taking everything that mattered with them. Then something changed inside her. The grief did not disappear, but something harder grew beside it. Something cold. She stood up. She walked to the nearest communication terminal, and she sent a message to Earth Command. Admiral Kang. Taeho received the transmission 6 hours later aboard the battleship Iron Will. He was 54 years old, a veteran of 3 conflicts, and known throughout the fleet for his calm nature. In 30 years of service, no one had ever seen him lose his temper. He read the message twice. Then he read it a 3rd time. The bridge crew watched him carefully. They had never seen his face look like this before. His expression had not changed much. His voice remained steady, but something in his eyes had shifted. Something that made even his most senior officers feel a chill run down their spines. "Get me a line to Earth Command," he said quietly. "Priority 1. Communication officer hesitated. "Sir, Priority 1 is reserved for extinctional-level threats." Admiral Kong turned to look at him. "I know what it is reserved for." The officer swallowed hard and opened the channel. On the Galactic Council station, far across the galaxy, a warning had arrived hours before the attack. The Veldra were known to them. They were called harvesters, a species that took the young of other races for experiments. For organ harvesting, for purposes too dark to speak of openly. The Council had sent a message to New Busan, warning them of the danger. The message arrived 3 hours after the children were taken. Elder Malvac, a council representative who had studied humans for decades, read the report of the abduction with growing unease. He had seen many species react to tragedy. Some collapsed into despair. Some sought diplomatic solutions. Some filed complaints with the council and waited for justice that would never come. Humans, he knew, would do none of these things. He requested an emergency meeting with the council leadership. When they gathered, he spoke plainly. "You must understand what we are dealing with," he said. "Humans are not like other species. They form bonds with their young that go beyond logic, beyond reason. When their children are threatened, something changes in them. They become something else entirely." The council leader, a being of pure light named Solvin, flickered with amusement. "They are a young species. Barely 3 centuries in space. What can they possibly do against the Veldra?" Malvac shook his head slowly. "You have read their history files. You have seen what they did to each other before they reached the stars. The wars, the weapons, the fury, that was long ago," Solvin replied. "They have evolved." "No," Malvac said, and his voice carried a weight that silenced the room. "They have not evolved. They have simply been waiting. And now, I fear, we are all about to remember why the universe should fear humanity." Back on the Iron Will, Admiral Kong stood alone in his quarters. He looked at a photograph on his desk. It showed a young girl, smiling, holding a small cat. His granddaughter. She lived on Nubus AN. She was one of the 340-7. He set the photograph down gently. Then he walked to the bridge and addressed his crew. "Set course for Earth," he said. "We have work to do." The news spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Every colony, every station, every ship received the same message. Children taken. 347 of them. Stolen from their school by an alien species called the Veldra. Within hours, the anger began to build. On Earth, General Park G1 stood before the assembled military council in the deep bunker beneath Seoul. She was 61 years old. Small in stature, but immense in presence. She had led humanity's defense forces for 12 years, and in all that time, she had never called an emergency assembly of this level. "You have all seen the reports," she said, her voice steady and cold. "The Veldra attacked without provocation. They took our children. They did not make demands. They did not attempt a negotiation. They simply took what they wanted and left." The room was silent. Generals, admirals, and commanders from every branch of service sat motionless, their faces hard as stone. "I have already issued mobilization orders to every fleet in human space," Gi-1 continued. "As of 1 hour ago, we are at war." No one questioned the decision. No one asked for debate. The vote was unanimous, though no vote was needed. When it came to children, humanity did not discuss. It acted. Admiral Kong Tae-ho arrived at Luna Station 2 days later. His ship, the Iron Will, joined 46 other warships already gathering in orbit around Earth's moon. More were coming. From every corner of human space, ships were changing course, canceling missions, abandoning stations, all heading to one place. On the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Cho Yunbai requested an emergency audience. She was young for a diplomat, only 35, but she had earned her position through skill and determination. She stood before the assembled council representatives without fear. "I come to you with a simple request," she said. "Give us the location of the Veldra homeworld." The council chamber fell quiet. Hundreds of alien representatives stared at the small human woman standing alone on the central platform, Solvin. The being of light who led the council spoke first. "Ambassador, we understand your pain. But the Council does not interfere in conflicts between species. It is not our place to choose sides." "I am not asking you to choose sides," Yunbai replied. "I am asking for information. Coordinates. Nothing more." "The Veldra are a protected member of this council," another representative said. "We cannot simply hand their location to a hostile force." Yunbai's eyes narrowed. "Protected? They attacked a peaceful colony. They kidnapped children. They are protected? Their cultural practices are their own concern," Solvin said. "We do not judge the internal behaviors of member species." "Internal behaviors?" Yunbai's voice rose slightly. "They harvested children from a human world. That is not internal. That is an act of war." "The Council does not recognize your claim of war," Solvin replied. "You are a young species. You do not yet understand how the galaxy functions. There are protocols, procedures, filing complaints, requesting mediation, allowing time for time. Yunbai cut him off, something no ambassador had ever done before. You want us to wait? To file complaints? While our children are being cut apart in some alien laboratory, the chamber erupted in murmurs. Several representatives looked offended. Others looked afraid. Yuan-Bai took a deep breath. When she spoke again, her voice was calm but carried an edge that made the air feel colder.
Us.
Let me be clear. We did not come here to ask for permission. We came as a courtesy. Humanity will find the Veldra homeworld with or without your help. We will retrieve our children, and anything that stands in our way will be removed. She turned and walked out of the chamber without waiting for a response. Elder. Malvac caught up with her in the corridor outside. He was tall and thin, with skin like old paper and eyes that had seen centuries of galactic history. Ambassador, he said quietly, you must understand the danger of what you are doing. Yunbai stopped walking. The danger? To whom? To everyone. Malvac glanced around to make sure they were alone. The Veldra have allies. They have been harvesting from lesser species for thousands of years. The Council has always looked away because the Veldra provide certain services. Medical technology, biological research. Research built on the bodies of children, Yunbai said flatly. Malvac nodded slowly. Yes, and no one has ever challenged them because no one has been willing to pay the price. He paused. Until now? What are you telling me, Elder? Malvac reached into his robe and pulled out a small data chip. The Veldra homeworld is called Veldra's Prime. It sits in a system with no other habitable planets. Their fleet numbers approximately 600 warships. He pressed the chip into her hand. I am telling you this because I have studied your species for decades, and I believe you might actually be able to do what you are planning. Yunbai looked at the chip, then at the old alien. Why help us? Malvac smiled sadly. Because I have seen the images from the Veldra facilities. I know what they do to the children they take, and I have waited a very long time for someone to make them stop. Back at Luna Station, Captain Li Wujin was assembling a special team. They would travel ahead of the main fleet, gather intelligence, find exactly where the children were being held. Dr. Yoon Hannah had demanded to be part of the mission. Command had refused at first, but she would not be turned away. My daughter is on that planet, she told Li. I will find her, with or without the fleet's permission. Li looked at her for a long moment. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that burned in every human heart at that moment. He nodded. Welcome to the team, Doctor. 2 days later, the Galactic Council received reports that 47 human warships had departed Earth space without authorization, heading toward Veldra territory by the time they realized what was happening. The number had grown to 112. Salvin called an emergency session. They cannot be serious, he said. The Veldra will destroy them. Elder Malvac sat quietly in his seat. He did not share Salvin's confidence. He had seen the look in Ambassador Cho's eyes. He had read the histories of human warfare, and he knew, with terrible certainty, that the Veldra had made the worst mistake any species could make. They had given humanity a reason to come for them. The Veldra outpost floated in the darkness between stars. It was a small station, used for communication and supply runs. 30 Veldra soldiers guarded it. They believed they were safe. They were wrong. Commander Beeknari led the assault team that struck in the dead of night. She was 40 years old, built like a weapon, with scars across her arms from a dozen battles. Her unit was called Black Tide, and they were the most feared Special Forces team in human space. The attack lasted for minutes. When it was over, every Veldra soldier was dead. And the station's computers had been stripped of every piece of data they contained. Nari stood over the main terminal, downloading files while her team secured the area. Most of the information was routine. Supply schedules, patrol routes, communication logs. But buried deep in the system, she found something else. Medical reports. Hundreds of them. All describing experiments performed on children from various species across the galaxy. She read the first report and felt her stomach turn. She read the second and had to look away. By the third, her hands were shaking with rage. Commander? One of her soldiers asked. What is it? Nari did not answer. She simply copied everything and sent it to the fleet. Then she set the station to self-destruct and led her team back to their ship. The data reached Admiral Kang 3 hours later. He read it alone in his quarters. When he emerged, his face was pale, but his eyes burned with cold fire. He called a meeting of all ship captains. 200 faces appeared on his screen, commanders of warships that had gathered from every corner of human space. Civilian vessels had joined 2 cargo ships and transports retrofitted with weapons by their crews. The fleet had grown larger than anyone expected. I'm going to share something with you, Kang said. It will be difficult to see. But you need to understand what we are fighting for. He showed them the medical reports. He showed them images from the Veldra facilities. He showed them what the Veldra did to the children they harvested. No one spoke when he finished. Several captains had tears streaming down their faces. Others had clenched their fists so tightly that their knuckles had turned white. The children are being held on Veldra's Prime, Kang continued. In underground facilities beneath their capital city. Our mission is simple. We will retrieve every single child, and we will make certain the Veldra never do this again. Far away in a cold, dark cell beneath the surface of Veldra's Prime, Kim Sua sat with her back against the wall. 43 other children were crowded into the same room, most of them younger than her. Some were crying quietly. Others had stopped crying days ago. Su-Ah was afraid. She had been afraid since the moment the Grey soldiers pulled her away from her school, threw her into a dark ship and brought her to this terrible place. She had seen things here that gave her nightmares. She had heard screams from other rooms that made her want to cover her ears and never listen again. But she could not give in to fear. Not when the younger children needed her. It is going to be okay, she told a small boy who was sobbing beside her. Someone will come for us. I know they will. How do you know? The boy asked. Su-Ah thought of her mother. She thought of the stories her mother had told her about Earth, about the long history of humanity, about all the terrible things humans had survived and overcome. Because that is what humans do, she said. We never leave our people behind. The Veldra High Council met in their great chamber, a massive room carved from black stone deep beneath their capital. They had received reports of the human fleet approaching their borders. 600 Veldra warships had been mobilized to meet them. This is nothing to worry about, the High Minister said. He was old, even by Veldra standards, with gray skin that had turned almost white with age. The humans are primitive. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. We have crushed species far more powerful than them. Reports say they have 400 ships, another council member said. That is more than we expected. 400 ships of inferior design, the High Minister replied. Our fleet will destroy them before they reach our world. This will be remembered as the day humanity learned its place in the galaxy. None of them noticed the small human probe drifting through their system, recording everything. Transmitting data back to the approaching fleet, Captain Li Wujin studied the probe's data aboard his ship. He had managed to slip past the Veldra patrols using a captured Veldra transport. Dr. Yoon Hanna sat beside him. Analyzing the scans of the underground facility, there, she said, pointing to a section of the map. That is where they are keeping the children. Level 7, Sector 4. Heavy security, but accessible through the maintenance tunnels. Lee nodded. We will need a distraction. Something to pull their forces away from the facility. The fleet can provide that, Hanna said. Once the battle begins, every Veldra soldier will be focused on the sky. Lee looked at her. You understand this will be dangerous. We may not survive. Hannah's expression did not change. My daughter is in that facility, Captain. There is nowhere else I would rather be. The human fleet gathered at the edge of the Veldra system. 400 ships hung in the darkness of space, their weapons powered, their crews ready. More ships were still arriving, civilian vessels that had crossed half the galaxy to join the fight. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of the Iron. All will... and addressed his fleet one final time. We will enter battle against an enemy that has stolen our children. They believe we are weak. They believe we are young. They believe we will fail. He paused, his voice hardening. They are wrong. We do not come to negotiate. We do not come to threaten. We come to retrieve our children. And anything that stands in our way will cease to exist. A roar of approval echoed across the communication channels. Every ship, every crew, Every single human in that fleet felt the same burning purpose in their heart. The engines powered up. The fleet moved forward. The hunt was over. The reckoning was about to begin. The Veldra fleet waited at the edge of their system, 600 warships arranged in perfect formation. They had fought many battles over the centuries. They had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and harvested countless species. They did not believe this day would be any different. Then the human fleet arrived. 400. Ships burst out of hyperspace in a wave of light and energy. But they did not slow down. They did not stop to form battle lines. They simply kept coming, accelerating toward the Veldra fleet at speeds that should have been impossible. The Veldra commander stared at his screen in confusion. What are they doing? This is not standard battle protocol. He would never understand that humans did not follow standard protocols. Not today. The first wave of human ships released thousands of small drones. The drones were cheap, simple, and packed with explosives. They swarmed toward the Veldra fleet like angry insects. Too small to target effectively, too numerous to ignore. The Veldra ships opened fire. They destroyed hundreds of drones. Thousands more kept coming. Then the drones reached the fleet and began to detonate. Pilot Shin Hu-sung led his squadron through the chaos. He was 26 years old, the youngest ace in the human fleet, with reflexes so fast that other pilots called him supernatural. His fighter danced between explosions and laser fire, moving in ways that seemed impossible. Target the command ship, he called to his squadron. Take out their coordination. 12 fighters followed him through the storm of battle. 3 were destroyed in the first minute. The remaining 9 pushed forward, dodging debris and enemy fire. Ho-sung saw the Veldra command ship ahead, a massive vessel covered in weapons. He pushed his throttle to maximum and activated his targeting system. For the children, he whispered. His missiles struck the command ship's bridge. The explosion tore through the vessel's upper decks. 2 seconds later, Squadron's remaining missiles hit the engine section. The command ship broke apart in a ball of fire. Without coordination, Veldra fleet fell into chaos. Ships began moving independently, their formations breaking apart. Human vessels pushed through the gaps, their weapons firing continuously. Admiral Kong watched the battle from the Iron Will's bridge. His face showed no satisfaction, no triumph, only cold determination. Order all ships to press the attack, he said. Do not let them regroup. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, 412 Veldra ships had been destroyed. 163 had surrendered. The rest had tried to flee, only to find human ships blocking every escape route. Human losses were heavy too. 87 ships destroyed. Thousands of crew members dead. But the path to Veldra's Prime was open. Commander Beak. Nari's dropship broke through the atmosphere as orbital bombardment began around them. Human ships targeted military bases, defense platforms, and government buildings. They avoided civilian areas, but only barely. The message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. The dropship landed hard near the entrance to the underground facility. Nari kicked open the door and led her team into the smoke and fire. Move fast, she ordered. The children are on level 7. They fought through corridors filled with Veldra soldiers. The aliens were tall and strong, with 4 arms and armor that could stop most weapons. But Nari's team had trained for this moment. They knew exactly where to aim, exactly how to move, exactly how to kill. Dr. Yoon Hana followed close behind, a medical kit on her back and a weapon in her hands. She had never fired a gun before this mission. Now, she moved through the battle like she had been doing it. Her whole life, they reached level 7 after 20 minutes of fighting. The door to Sector 4 was sealed with heavy locks. Nari placed charges on the door. Everyone back. The explosion blew the door inward. Smoke and dust filled the corridor. Through it, Hannah could see a large room beyond. She ran forward before anyone could stop her. The room was full of children. Hundreds of them, from dozens of species, all huddled together in the darkness. They looked up at the humans with wide, frightened eyes. Hannah screamed, "Sua, where are you?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small figure pushed through the crowd of children. A girl with messy hair and torn clothes, thin from hunger but alive. So wonderfully, beautifully alive, Mom. Hannah dropped to her knees and caught her daughter in her arms. She held her tight, so tight as if she could make up for every moment they had been apart. I knew you would come, Sua whispered. I told everyone. I said someone would come. Hannah could not speak. Tears streamed down her face as she held her daughter. Around them, other children began to move toward the soldiers. They were scared but hopeful, reaching out for help they had stopped believing would ever arrive. All teams, Nari said into her radio, we have the children. Begin evacuation immediately. On the surface, the Veldra High Council received word that their facility had been breached. The High Minister stared at the report in disbelief. How is this possible? He demanded. We had 600 ships. The humans destroyed most of them, an aide reported. Our fleet is gone, and call for reinforcements. Contact our allies. The other species will not allow this aggression to stand. The aide hesitated. We have received word from the Galactic Council. They have issued a non-interference order. No species will help us. The High Minister felt his world crumbling around him. That is impossible. We have treaties, agreements, centuries of the humans shared the medical reports the aide interrupted. The experiments? The harvesting. Everyone knows what we have been doing. No one will stand with us. Admiral Kong's voice came through on every communication channel on the planet. Attention, Veldra High Council. I am Admiral Kong Teho of the Human Defense Forces. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will destroy every military installation. Every government building and every piece of infrastructure on your planet, you will be sent back to the Stone Age. The choice is yours. The High Minister looked at his council members. They looked back at him with fear in their eyes. We cannot surrender, he said. Our people will never accept, then your people will die, the aide said quietly. All of them. 60 minutes later, the Veldra refused to surrender. Admiral Kong nodded slowly. He had expected this answer. He had hoped for it. General Park, he said into his communicator. They have refused. On Luna Station, General Park GI-1 signed the order she had prepared days ago. Protocol Omega is authorized, she said. Leave them nothing. The bombardment began. 6 months had passed since the war ended. The planet Veldra's Prime still orbited its sun, but it was no longer the heart of an empire. The great cities that had once risen toward the sky now lay in ruins. The shipyards that had built fleets to conquer the galaxy were melted slag. The laboratories where children had been carved apart were buried under tons of rubble. 2.3 billion Veldra still lived on the planet's surface. They had been stripped of space travel, stripped of advanced weapons, stripped of everything that had made them a threat. Human satellites circled their world day and night, watching, waiting, making sure they would never rise again. It was not extinction. Admiral Kang had made that clear from the beginning. Humanity did not seek to destroy the Veldra as a species. They sought to end them as a power. And they had succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. The children came. Home, 344 of the 347 taken from New Busan were returned to their families. The other 3 had not survived what the Veldra did to them. Memorials were built in their honor. Small gardens of flowers outside the rebuilt Starlight Academy. But the human children were not the only ones rescued. Thousands of other children, from dozens of species across the galaxy, had been found in the Veldra facilities. Humans returned them all. Every single one. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Kim Sua sat in a garden on New Busan, drawing pictures in a small notebook. She did this every day now. Her therapist said it helped her process what she had experienced. She drew flowers sometimes, or butterflies, or her mother's face. But mostly, she drew soldiers. Human soldiers in black armor, carrying big guns, breaking down doors to save children. Dr. Yoon Hannah watched her daughter from the kitchen window. The nightmares still came, 2 or 3 times a week. Some nights Sua woke up screaming, crying for help that had already arrived months ago. The healing would take time, maybe a lifetime. But she was alive. She was home, and that was more than Hannah had dared to hope for during those dark days. She had left her research position to become an advocate for colony defense. She traveled between human worlds now, speaking to governments and military leaders. pushing for the creation of a permanent rapid response force. Never again, she told them. Never again would human children wait alone in the dark. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Cho Yoon requested one final audience. The chamber was full when she arrived. Every species that had a seat on the council had sent representatives. They stared at the small human woman as she walked to the central platform. She stood there for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. 6 months ago, she began. I came before this council and asked for help. You refused. You called us young. You called us primitive. You told us to wait, to be patient, to trust in your protocols and procedures. She paused. Her eyes moved across the chamber, meeting the gaze of representative after representative. We did not wait. We did not follow your protocols. We went to Veldris Prime. We retrieved our children. And we broke the power of a species that had been harvesting the young of this galaxy for thousands of years. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Yeonbai raised her hand, and they fell silent. You called us young, and you were right. By your standards, humanity is an infant species, barely taking our first steps among the stars. But let me tell you what we learned in our short time on Earth. We learned that the universe is cold and cruel, and does not care about justice. We learned that evil will grow if no one stops it. And we learned that sometimes being young means being willing to do what older, wiser species have forgotten how to do. She straightened her shoulders. I stand before you today not to apologize, not to explain, not to ask for forgiveness. I stand here to deliver a promise. Her voice hardened. Touch a human child and there will be no trial. There will be no debate. There will be no mercy. Only silence where your civilization once stood. This is not a threat. It is simply the truth. And every species in this galaxy would be wise to remember it. She turned and walked out of the chamber. No one tried to stop her. No one said a word. Elder Malvac sat alone in his quarters that night, writing in his personal journal. He had kept records for centuries, documenting the rise and fall of species across the galaxy. Now he added a new entry. Today, I witnessed something that has not happened in 10,000 years. The Galactic Council was silenced by a species younger than most of our buildings. The humans have sent a message that will echo through history. They will burn the stars themselves to protect their young. And I believe every word. He set down his pen and looked out the window at the distant stars. The universe has changed. I do not know if it has changed for better or worse. But I know this. I am glad I lived to see it. Admiral Kung Tae-ho retired from service 3 months after the war ended. He had given 40 years of his life to the fleet and he was tired. But before he left, he made one final visit. The memorial for the 3 children who did not come home was a small garden near the center of New Busan's capital. Each child had a tree planted in their memory. Young trees that would grow tall over the years. Kong stood before his granddaughter's tree. She had been 7 years old. She had loved cats and strawberry ice cream and stories about space explorers. She had died on a cold table in a Veldro laboratory, alone and afraid. He had not been able to save her. That failure would haunt him for the rest of his life. I am sorry, he whispered. I should have been faster. I should have. He stopped. There were no words that could undo what had happened. No victory that could bring her back. He could only stand there, an old man with tears on his face, and hope that somewhere, somehow, she knew that he had tried. Years passed. Kim Sua grew up. She graduated from school with honors. She applied to the Fleet Academy. On her application, under the question reason for enlistment, she wrote 7 words that made the reviewing. Officers fall silent. So no child. Waits alone again. She was accepted immediately. On her first day at the academy, she walked past a large statue in the main courtyard. It showed a group of soldiers breaking through a door, light streaming in behind them. The plaque at the base read, "We came for our children." Hua stopped and looked up at the statue for a long moment. She remembered the sound of that door exploding. She remembered the light flooding into the darkness. She remembered her mother's voice, calling her name. She straightened her uniform and walked toward her future. The galaxy had learned its lesson, but there would always be new threats, new dangers, new species who thought they could prey on the weak without consequence. When they came, humanity would be ready, and so would she.